This week in Teams, Craig and I review the November 2020 What's New in Teams blog, and we tell you what we think is the most important. We'll also tell you a little bit about why PowerApps is insanely cool and maybe update you on our Christmas decorations if we don't strangle each other with them first.
I like it when you read on the teleprompter. Good job.
Thanks, Craig. I like it when you cut me off and have transitions to new topics without letting me know about them.
Yes. Well, I'm still excited about Christmas decorations, so I got all mine out. We may post pictures on our blog if you guys want to see it, but I have 35 figures, right? So I have like 12 toy soldiers lying in my driveway. I've got nutcrackers, I've got nativity sets, I've got Mickey and Minnie, I've got elves, I've got a lot. And then I've got hundreds of lights that all live up in my attic of my garage. So taking that down takes a couple hours to pull up and down that ladder. I need a better way.
Yeah. We have 15 bins of Halloween stuff and 13 bins of Christmas stuff. And then we store a bunch of our outside stuff in the shed, and then a bunch of our stuff in the basement. But so we've got the AT-AT blow up AT-AT. I'm completely anti blow ups, but my wife has won on this one. So we've got the blow up AT-AT. We've got a blow up Jack Skellington, and the reindeer led by Zero. For those of you who are Nightmare Before Christmas fans. And then this year, new to the decorations, we wrapped one of our trees with red and white LED rope lights. But what I'm really genuinely excited about is last year, coming out of the holidays, we spent 2 weeks looking for large wreaths to use. So we bought a 36-inch wreath on clearance. It was $400 on clearance for like $70 or $80. Fully decorated. It's 36 inches. It's perfect to fit over. You know how garages sometimes have those like circular vents over them?
Yes.
So we have one of those, and we installed that there with lights. And then when we went to Texas for the Winter Classic. No. When we went to Texas for the Winter Classic last year, we actually, one of our friends, we went to visit her house. Her Christmas decorations were up, and she had this gorgeous 5-foot, 60-inch in diameter wreath over her house.
How many centimeters, Jay? How many centimeters for our foreign listeners?
I'd have to do math. I don't like math. 5 and 60 is easy. Conversion math is not my specialty. Anyway, and she had an extra. The company had sent her 2, and they didn't want to pay for the shipping to send it back. So she gave it to us, and we checked it on our trip home. And so I'm really excited that we got to put that together. And so that's on the side of the house. Big wreath. And it's just, it's massive, man. It's so cool.
Speaking of cool, let's transition today. What about Together Mode?
I'm picking up what you're putting down, Craig. So Together Mode's been in the news this week. Since it's come out, there's been a question of, is it valuable? Does it provide actual value? I think when it was first announced, they talked about it from a perspective of trying to bridge the gap in, the pandemic work from home era and try and get people together and stuff. And it did a little bit, but it felt gimmicky. What were your thoughts?
I think it depends, right? For me, it doesn't matter. I do a ton of calls with a ton of people, and nobody turns their camera on. So I can't get enough people to actually turn their camera on to actually use Together Mode. But that being said, if I was teaching and could get people to do it, that's awesome. I know Vesa, who does our PMP call, loves it. Like, he turns it on, and what I've seen a lot of people use it for some reason or another is to have everybody on the call in together mode, and then they turn around and take a selfie or grab a screenshot of it.
Yep.
So it's a cool way of doing that kind of interaction and still having that feel. So if I was more education, because like teachers I know who I've talked to like it, right? So it's got to have that value. It still can kind of feel like a classroom. It's not for everybody, but I mean, so a lot of features aren't for everybody, right? But it's just a nice value add when you have the chance to do it. I know, like for like happy hours and stuff, it seems pretty cool if you're doing those kind of things. Again, I don't know for me like the business value, but I don't do those types of things. And then for just the general use as a fun thing, right? That works out pretty cool.
That's fair.
So, and then they announced some like Christmas themes and stuff, or winter themes, or a couple other ones today. So it's not just the theater, what I call the theater seating or stadium seating or whatever.
Yeah. So that's where I think it gets interesting. So first of all, I think it's funny people and then described exactly what I did today for my user group meeting. So if I remember when I do the post editing, I'll actually show the screenshot of our user group meeting. And you'll see, and that's in the theater mode because our tenant for the user group hasn't gotten the new feature to be able to change the background. Now that's where it gets interesting is they released the new backgrounds. They're not generally available yet, but they are really actually very cool. And what I like about them is they didn't just take the theater and change the graphic. They actually changed the mechanics a little bit. So there's different placements. It feels like there's some perspective zooming on some of them. I felt like I saw that on one or two on the tenant that I was experimenting with.
Yeah, there was something around like sitting at a table or something like that too.
Yep.
So different at a bar even I have seen. That's more, I think, in just the hey, well, these are some cool things we're trying to do type of whatever.
Right. So long story short, I do think it's a gimmick.
That you have those, then they'll get bigger use for it.
Yeah. I mean, I do think generally speaking, it is a bit of a gimmick, but it's a gimmick with an understanding that sometimes not everybody, but some people strive to get, to see lots of faces and stuff. And it is pretty cool there. I liked your example of teachers and education. I'll have to ask my wife if she's tried it with any of her classes and see what her experience is like.
That's so interesting. Like I know my daughters have seen it, been in the, when I've done it, and they're 9 and 10, and they like it. Like they love that. They love the emojis, the being able to have the whole chat with the thing. They really like Teams. They would like to use it more, but they're unfortunately not using it in their school system. But,
okay. Are they using Zoom in their school system?
Some Zoom, some mostly Gmail type stuff. So
gotcha.
I don't really know.
Yeah, my daughter's system uses Blackboard Collaborate. But my wife's uses Teams, so that's cool. Anyway, moving through, we also pulling out of the What's New blog, which, by the way, if you're looking for the link, check the blog and the YouTube description and it'll be there. But pulling out of that blog, the polls and teams have been announced as coming through with forms. So that's pretty cool. You can actually push the poll directly into your team's channels and stuff, right?
Yeah. So that works out pretty slick. If you have some questions you want to ask, you can do it right there. It pushes it out there. I have heard some information. I'd have to double check it and put it in the blog post about what happens when you get guests that are logged in and it's kind of an anonymous user, being able to tell who they are. I shouldn't have brought it up, but I'll have to look into it. I know somebody was saying something about, if you're having a team meeting and it's not a team meeting, but if it's a normal meeting, but you have a guest user or somebody like that, anonymous, they might not they're not able to answer the poll. You have to be a member of the team to answer the poll, at least at this point.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah. I don't believe, like, if I have a meeting and I send an invite out, and even though you're in the chat and I put the poll, if you're an anonymous user and you're not part of the team, that you won't be able to answer the poll. I'm thinking that's something they're working on. I have to double check that. So just know that I've heard rumblings about that.
Okay, that's interesting. So for the conference we just did, the M365 Chicago conference, that wouldn't have helped there since most of our attendees were guests. But for an office or a classroom situation where your students and employees will be in your Active Directory and have access, that's okay. That's good to know. Speaking of people in your Active Directory, if you have used Presence in Microsoft Teams, that's the ability to set a status and set status has been there for a while. The ability to set away mode or actively available or in do not disturb mode. What recently was announced was the fact that you can actually set that to have a duration. So not only can you say I'm in a call, but you can click the duration button and say, okay, expire this in 30 minutes or an hour, which is really helpful because I can definitely tell you that I cannot count on one hand how many times I've put myself in do not disturb mode and realized 3 days later I was still in do not disturb mode.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a request that I think a lot of people have been asking for, waiting for. Not so much the do not disturb and forgetting to come back from do not disturb, but saying they're available and forgetting that they're available or busy, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's important to be
Yep.
able to do it and have a time and not necessarily worry about it. Still waiting for it to work 100% with Exchange and see when I've got meetings to do that, and then just automatically come out. It should do that, but
Yeah.
I've
Yours
heard
doesn't do that?
rumblings that people have said not 100% always.
Oh.
I think it does. At least people tell me that it doesn't. So we'll just say that.
Ah. It doesn't work on my machine.
Yeah, oh, my machine. I have not actually seen it work that way. Or actually, what would be cooler is if it did it when you join the meeting. Like, because there's sometimes I will have it and it'll say that I am not do not disturb because I'm in a meeting, but I never joined the meeting.
Right.
So then I manually have to change it if I want people to know that I'm available. So,
That's
and
fair.
that might be because I get invited, just the sheer volume of our size of our organization. I get invited to a lot of things I don't have to attend, right? Just they send out like, we will send out like a meeting invite and then it'll have 4 different times because we're trying to accommodate people in time zones and you go to the one that you can
That's
make. And
yeah,
a lot of times
that's
I will
best for
have
you.
all on calendar because I don't know at the time when I'm going to have availability. So, I just want to be able to join it. So sometimes I'm looking not as busy as I am, which has got to throw our workplace analytics out of place. But that is a different topic for a different call.
That does make me want to look into whether or not Workplace Analytics looks at meetings you actually went to or just meetings that are on
No,
your schedule. But that's a different. I don't want to talk about it.
it
Do
looks
you
at
have the
meetings
answer
that
to
you've
that question off
accepted.
the top of your head?
Yes. So it depends, right? It looks at meetings that you have accepted or meetings that you've accepted tentative but have not declined. You
Okay.
can change the setting on how you look at that, but it does not know whether or not you've actually went into that meeting. Now, there's another metric that you can do and pull the Teams calls in and see if you're in a team call or not.
Okay.
But as far as meetings, I mean, like if it's on your Exchange calendar, there's no way for it to know if you actually go to the meeting, right? Because the meeting might be in a conference room.
Well,
So
yeah,
I wouldn't know, but
the in-person meetings, sure, but with the number of people working from home, I was curious if they had built that in. That would be interesting.
yeah, so there are 2 metrics that you would have to look at. You kind of divide. So meeting time, so it'll look at the meetings they're actually scheduled for, and then there's actual call time, and then there's unscheduled call time. So time that wasn't in the meeting, but it knows you were on a call. And there's a number of different ways to get there. And I've been doing a lot of workshops on workplace analytics lately, so that is why I know that.
That's fair. And it sounds like that's a good episode to follow up on since you have recent knowledge on it.
Yeah, I deliver what we call Workplace Analytics Academy lately. So I am toot my own horn, but I am about one of 4 people in the United States who's accredited to deliver that for Microsoft. We have partners and stuff who do it, but we got a new batch of people going to be doing it, but somehow I accidentally ended up in the trial for it.
Real quick, lift your arm up over your head. All right, bend it down. And no, behind your back, and give yourself a good pat on the back there, Craig.
Oh, I did not know where you were going with that. But hey, it's the little things that make me happy.
No, that is really cool. I make fun because we're friends. It's what we do.
No, I know. Yeah, it was one of those things that they sent out an email, said anybody interested in, and I said sure, and then I forgot about it. I got invited to it, and I was
That's
like,
funny.
I went through the training, but I was like I was like one of two people in America that actually decided to follow up on the training and do like the workshop and the presentation and work with the product group to get what we call accredited with it. So
Cool. All right, I see a future episode coming up. So speaking of new enhancements and not future episodes, the next section we had to talk about was some updates on the mobile side. The first thing, I'm going to go out of order in what's written there, is just passing through the iOS phones, mobile phones, Apple phones are expecting updates for the UI experience for meetings. If you
yes,
are, yeah, I was going to say just briefly, the meeting experience, they've been making tweaks. I don't even want to call them massive
right.
changes, just tweaks from the placement of the bar that's now across the top of the meeting to the intro screen where it actually shows you this is what your camera looks like, so you remember that your background has changed. It shows you, hey, your hardware settings for audio are these. Some really cool things. So the fact that they're updating iOS there in November, announcing those things, that's good. The other thing I thought that was really interesting there, I didn't realize that on the mobile device, the instant meeting support didn't exist. So what I'm referring to there is the Meet Now option. If you're in the calendar
Right.
tab, there's a Meet Now button on the desktop. I didn't realize that didn't exist mobile. So that it's a good feature parity piece there.
Yeah, and I don't think that we've covered it, but something that's important to also talk if we're going to talk mobile is, I believe this rolled out a few weeks, maybe a couple months ago now, but to be able to transition from your desktop to your phone during the meeting and
Yes.
not really lose it. That I think that was huge for a lot of people, who travel, salespeople, and things like that,
Yep.
or just having issues with your desktop and want to travel. Or maybe you did that on one of our calls when we were doing the M365 meetings, but your desktop wasn't working very well, so you transitioned it to the phone, and if you wouldn't have told us, we wouldn't have known.
Yep.
So that was pretty.
Honestly, I use that on a daily basis, and I'm glad you mentioned it. Working from home, I definitely use my kitchen more than I used to use the kitchen at the office. And so I will literally, if I'm between meetings with no time, I will start a meeting on my mobile, go downstairs, grab my water, grab my snack, come back upstairs, click join from my desktop and tell it to replace the mobile device. And yeah, people don't even notice unless I mean, they might notice if my video changes, but they don't notice from an audio perspective. You don't miss a beat because it actually does the transition. It drops this one or drops the original when the new one actually connects. So it's really cool. Yeah. Good catch.
No,
That's not in the blog, but it is a recent enhancement.
yeah, that's where I thought we were going. That's where you were going to go when you were going mobile. I was like waiting for it, and then I'm like, he doesn't have it.
Nope. I
Also,
missed it.
speaking of people like you who eat while we're working, right? Noise suppression, right? So when you're munching on those snacky chips, is come out. So
It's a really good question. Have you heard me typing throughout this meeting?
no, I have not. Have you been
There you
typing?
go. It's interesting. There are some calls I'm on where they hear it and some where they don't. And I think that is a factor of the noise suppression. So noise suppression, generally speaking, people get headphones or microphones that do noise suppression.
Right.
But in the last 3 or 4 months, Microsoft has been pushing out updates to increase the ability to do software-based noise suppression. And it's been pretty cool. One of my coworkers is really focused on the concept, and every couple of weeks he's like, "Hey, can you hear this?" And he'll like scrunch up paper or chew chips or whatever, and just to
Sweet.
see if it's getting better. So good
Yeah, I
catch.
figure we should partner with Doritos on a commercial for that, but hey, I'm not in marketing.
Do you hear that, marketing team? Craig's got an actual good idea right there.
There you
I
go.
wonder, would Microsoft pay Doritos or would Doritos pay Microsoft for that product placement ad?
Well, I think it would be so joint venture where they would both chip in for that and pay half of the Super Bowl commercial spot, right?
that Craig, you got to reach out to marketing on this one. I like where you're going.
Go big or go home. Wait till you see our Super Bowl ad.
I'm sure there will be a good one.
Yes.
So also in call enhancements, the fact that call merge is now available, so that if you can make a phone call, make another phone call, and bring them together just like you can on a phone. More and more, Microsoft Teams is becoming more is increasing the capabilities to match things like Avaya and other phone systems. So I'm not surprised to hear that this rolled out.
Sweet.
And then
the next section on our list talks about Teams displays and Teams certified devices. I think that could be skipped unless you want to talk about it.
I think this was interesting. So we'll skip, we won't talk in detail about it, but what I thought was interesting about this is they announced Teams displays about 6 weeks ago, maybe. They announced the release of the first one. And we actually, the M365 Chicago conference actually gave one away, as or 3 away as part of our process. And I don't have a companion device or anything like that, and I want to play with it a little bit, but I don't want to pay $400 for it. But what what caught my eye, so go read the blog to see details. But what caught my eye about it was I started to get curious. What does Team Certified actually mean? Like, if I'm buying a pair of headphones, why do I care if it's Team Certified? So I'll put it in the blog, and I'll link to the original article that talks about it. So just briefly running through what that means, and there's a lot more information on the website that'll be in our blog. Specifically, the fact that if multiple audio peripherals, 2 different headphones, 2 different microphones or whatever, are plugged into your machine, the one that is Team Certified will automatically get selected. It'll get prioritized. Another thing that was interesting from a video perspective, there are specific requirements for noise, color, image detail, latency, and frame rate, and field of view. The field of view is a good one if you've ever looked at the together mode and you notice how everyone's cut off like at the chin, but they're sitting in a big chair.
Yeah.
The field of view is part of that problem. So the fact that the Team Certified actually requires that is really interesting to me. And then the other one that really caught my eye was that all devices support firmware updates to allow new features and performance improvements too. So the fact that Microsoft is saying, if you want this stamp, you have to have built into your hardware the ability to update, so that if we make changes, you can make changes to match.
Well, that it's been so rare that Microsoft has put a change to Teams that I can't see that that's an important feature.
I feel like that was sarcasm.
That was sarcasm. I wasn't sure that you caught it at first. You were like, yes. No, that does not sound at all what I was saying.
Oh, man. All right. So that's enough about
so basically,
so Craig, in the opener, we teased a little bit about Power Platform and PowerApps. And in this blog post, there's an announcement about the UI for PowerApps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents. You know, talk to us a little bit about what Power Virtual Agents are, and more specifically, why do end users care about them?
So Power Virtual Agents are like the chatbots. They're actually built on top of Power Automate, but they allow us to actually build not just chatbots, but bots that allow us to use to interface with users, right? So question and answer type things, you've seen them around for a while. They're on everybody's websites now. Where I think it's really comes in useful is in Teams, right? Because you're used to Teams chatting, you're used to Teams putting channel messages. It's a very type-in friendly user interface, and everybody's used to that. So if we can build in bots that I can reference, and it usually by an @ sign, so I just say @my bot, right? Then I can ask it questions, and then I can build my bot out with a pretty cool user interface, or not user interface, but developer interface. That's really easy for me to say, okay, this is the question I'm expecting. Here are the answers I'm providing. If I don't get those answers, ask another question for clarification. And it uses AI to basically interpret what you're typing in as the question, because we don't want it to have to say, what color is my car, right? And I can say, hey, do you have cars that are in certain colors, or do you have a red car, right? And all of that should get the same kind of response. So The AI is awesome to interpret what you're typing in if it's close or relatively close to the question, and then I can have answers that do that, ask you for more information, feel relatively relatively conversationalized as you do that. I don't know if that's a word, if I just made that up. But then we can also type into the Power Platform to do other things, especially like Power Automate, where I might want to do a workflow. And I think we've seen that for a while, right? Where we can hook into other things and maybe like, hey, I want to create a new team. Oh, is it a private team? Is it a public team? It's a public team. Then, what do we want to call it? I can give it a name. Use PowerShell, the Graph API, and do stuff on the back end and actually build out that team. So a lot of interaction in that. So that's pretty cool. And then as you talked about PowerApps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, they're becoming first class, I want to say citizens almost, of the Teams thing, of the Teams application. They're apps that you can add to your Rail. And then when you click on them, it just opens up the IDE for those. So instead of having to go into PowerApps, Power Automate, you can do it straight from Teams and build there. And then on top of all of that goodness, and easily publish to your team and put it in a tab and access that app. And it's really simple. On top of all that goodness, you get the Dataverse, which is the renaming of Project Oakdale, which was the renaming of Dataflex, which we had a conversation with a couple weeks ago now. We had a whole podcast on Dataflex, right?
Yep.
So you pipped the audio, you pipped the episode, Jay.
Yeah, I'll make sure we put it in the blog. Bobby Chang was our guest. We had a whole episode on business apps and the value of Power Automate. So I highly recommend checking it out. But the reason I wanted to make sure we included this is, most of our listeners are end users. They're knowledge workers. They're not developers. They don't come from that background. And I've spoken about it before, and in my Buzzkill podcast, we talked to Samit Sani, who's a perfect example of someone who is an end user of the system, who learns a little bit and all of a sudden they become a problem solver with these tools. So definitely recommend, listen to Samit's story, listen to the episode we had with Bobby Chang a few weeks ago. And again, both of those will be here. If you're trying to solve, if you have a problem that you can't figure out how to figure it out, whether it's workflow, whether it's Q&A bot type things, these are things that are available to most people in Office 365.
Yeah, so a lot of that comes with your E3 license, E5 license. So I'm not sure on how the government works, but if you have a fairly, if you have a fairly good license, not necessarily E3, it can be the other threes, like an Education 3 or whatever.
G3,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, you have the ability to create PowerApps, Power Automate right in Teams, and that is cool, right? So, yeah. And then again, Dataverse is basically tying into a database model as opposed to using like a list-based model or an Excel spreadsheet that you might have done with other kind of Canvas apps. So it gives you the ability to have a database and have it live right in Teams in an environment. We could do a whole show on that. Similarly to that, I think we should add a link to, I will find it and get it to you, but Donna Sakar, who is one of the Microsoft project managers, had a big push on training that Microsoft is putting out to help people learn how these new tools work. So PowerApps, Power Automate, with the thought of there are people during this time who have lost their jobs or trying to make transitions in careers, right? So being able to go through these programs and basically learn these tools for free, and then go out and try to get jobs on that, because there are a lot of tech jobs out there, and it's become even more important now that people are working from home and need to get things done and trying to automate stuff. And a lot of jobs have struggled or gone away and people don't know what to do. So cool. I think a really awesome job by Microsoft to say, here's an option for you. Here's something that you can relate to that. I'm going to say, if you've got Excel skills and you try to get really deep in Excel, there are jobs out there. But tech is not that anybody here is going to make it that far in the episode. Hopefully they did. That's a novice, but there are technologies out there that people are screaming for and looking for, and Teams and PowerApps and Power Automate are really. So if it's not just for you, if you know somebody who's looking for a job or something, or thinking, what do I do with my career? Right, kids coming out of school.
What have I done with my career? No, I'm kidding. Please keep going. So
yeah.
The link to Donna Sakar thing would be really good to add to our blog as well. So definitely, if you want to know what Craig's talking about, check it out. There's a few other things that I wanted to talk about today, but I'm going to push them. The nice thing about this release blog, if you've never looked at it, is at the bottom it actually goes into some market things. So there's a section on education, and the key release there was insights across classes. There's a section on first line workers, so they talk about Shift, which is a first line worker tool, and how they have schedule assistance built into it now. And there's a section on government, and there's a lot of features on the government side, from GCC all the way to the DoD networks, and new features that are coming. So check out the blog, and if I can get Craig to do it, maybe our next episode we'll do a what's new in Office 365 and Teams for government next week.
Yeah, we should be able to do that, because I know you're going to be really excited, but I've seen a lot of stuff that and you've probably seen it too, that they're trying to do feature parity government a lot sooner than.
Yes. Yeah, the big one announced was. Yeah, the big one announced, and we didn't even talk about it today, was that breakout rooms is becoming available in the government, and it just got announced general availability globally. And in fact, my wife, who's a teacher, got breakout rooms in her tenant today. So some really cool stuff that's going on out there. We'll talk about it next week. But Craig, anything you want to say before we wrap up?
If I don't talk to you before next week, happy Hanukkah. I think that starts tonight. So
it does.
It does. I don't know. I was gonna say Merry Christmas or Happy New Year's or any of those things, but we're probably gonna be recording next week, so I can.
If we don't record before Christmas, Craig, we got bigger problems than which holiday we forgot to welcome people for. Hey, for those curious,
any of those, anything that you celebrate.
For those curious, you're watching this episode on our new YouTube channel for This Week in Teams. We're still part of the On the Spot network, the podcast network. If you like listening to what we're talking about, make sure you subscribe to us. If you want to check out our sister podcast, Buzzkill, go subscribe there. And post it in the comments. Hey, if you put something in the comments that isn't a link to a porn site, because, man, those are rampant on YouTube, I'll send you a This Week in Teams sticker. So that's all I got to say, Craig.
I got no comment on the porn sites. Sorry about that, Jim. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to post it.
This has been another This Week in Teams with Craig Janke and Jay Lees. Thank you so much for checking us out.
Have a pleasant tomorrow. Have a good day and a pleasant tomorrow. I don't know. Talk to you later. Bye. I was going to hang up.